Have you ever wondered why the deepest and most perceptive people you know seem to carry an invisible weight on their shoulders? Why those who see beyond appearances often distance themselves from crowds and seek refuge in solitude? There exists a disturbing pattern that runs through human history and which we rarely discuss openly. The wisest individuals of our species tend to also be the most traumatized, and this painfully acquired wisdom pushes them to the margins of society as voluntary exiles from normalcy. If you have ever felt this profound disconnection from the world around you, if you have experienced the sensation of seeing through the illusions that keep others comfortably asleep, then you intuitively understand the cruel price we pay for expanded perception of reality. This is not a casual or melancholic observation about introverted personalities. It is a systematic phenomenon that has shaped entire civilizations and continues to define who we are as a species. From Greek philosophers who drank hemlock for questioning established truths, to medieval mystics who retreated to monasteries after transformative experiences, from modern artists who created masterpieces amid mental crises, to contemporary scientists who discovered inconvenient truths about our nature, history is replete with brilliant minds that paid a devastating emotional price for their ability to see beyond the veil of social conventions. Trauma, contrary to what our wellness culture would like to believe, is not simply an obstacle to be overcome or a wound to be healed. It is often the most powerful catalyst for the development of profound wisdom. When we experience events that destroy our basic assumptions about how the world works, when our comfortable mental structures are shattered by realities we can no longer ignore, our mind is forced to reconstruct a more complex and nuanced understanding of existence. This process of cognitive and emotional reconstruction generates insights that are simply not available to those who live lives protected by normalcy. Consider for a moment the typical journey of someone who develops deep wisdom. It often begins with some form of rupture. The premature death of a loved one that destroys the illusion that life is fair and predictable, a devastating betrayal that reveals the hidden layers of human nature, a financial or professional collapse that unmasks the fragility of our security systems, or perhaps an illness that forces a direct confrontation with mortality. These events are not merely unfortunate, they are portals to a deeper understanding of the human condition. For centuries, human societies developed sophisticated mechanisms to protect most of their members from these disturbing perceptions. We created rituals, traditions, belief systems, and social structures that function as psychological buffers, allowing people to live without constantly confronting the harshest truths about existence. These protections are not system flaws. They are essential features that enable the functioning of civilization. Most people need to believe in optimistic narratives about progress, justice, meaning, and purpose to maintain the motivation necessary to work, form families, and contribute to social continuity. But those who have passed through the fire of profound trauma can no longer comfortably inhabit these protected narratives. They have seen behind the curtain and cannot simply pretend it doesn't exist. This expanded perception becomes a constant source of alienation. In casual conversations about career plans, they hear the subtexts about mortality and transience. In political discussions, they recognize the ancestral patterns of domination and submission that repeat themselves in different garb. In social celebrations, they feel the weight of conventions that keep people together but also limit them. Modern technology has dramatically intensified this phenomenon in ways we are only beginning to understand. In recent decades, our exposure to information about suffering, injustice, and global complexity has increased exponentially. Through the screens we carry in our pockets, we are daily bombarded with images and accounts of tragedies, corruption, violence, and despair that previously remained hidden from most people. This constant exposure to the dark side of human experience is creating an entire generation of individuals prematurely exposed to collective traumas. Simultaneously, social media and digital culture have created new mechanisms of ostracism for those who express uncomfortable perceptions. Engagement algorithms favor content that confirms existing biases and generates simple emotional reactions, marginalizing voices that offer complex analyses or question popular narratives. The result is an environment where genuine wisdom is systematically silenced in favor of opinions that are easier to process and share. Paradoxically, our era of digital connectivity has also deepened the isolation of those with acute perceptions. While it is easier than ever to find information and communities online, it has become more difficult to find authentic relationships with people who understand the complexities of human experience. Digital communication, by its very nature, favors superficial expressions and quick reactions over the deep contemplation and nuanced dialogue that nurture wisdom. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this profound disconnection in your daily life? This sensation that despite being more connected than ever through technology, something essential has been lost along the way? I know it can be difficult to put into words. Many of us carry this weight in silence, believing we are the only ones to feel this particular emptiness. But you are not alone in this. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this disconnection when," and completing it with your personal experience. Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to feel they are not alone in their struggle. The relationship between trauma and wisdom is not simply a statistical correlation. It is a fundamental psychological process that shapes how we understand reality. When our expectations about the world are violently confronted with experiences we cannot integrate into our existing mental schemas, our brain is forced to develop new, more sophisticated cognitive maps. This process, known by psychologists as post-traumatic growth, results in several enhanced capacities: a more nuanced understanding of human nature, greater tolerance for ambiguity and paradox, increased sensitivity to emotional and social subtexts, and an expanded perspective on what truly matters in life. However, these same capacities that we consider wisdom also create significant barriers to normal social integration. Someone who has developed a deep understanding of the performative nature of much human behavior may find it difficult to authentically participate in social interactions that depend on maintaining certain collective fictions. A person who has experienced the fundamental fragility of our meaning systems may feel alienated in conversations that assume the stability of these systems as given. This alienation is often misunderstood by both the wise themselves and the society that surrounds them. It is common to interpret the withdrawal of the wise as intellectual arrogance, moral superiority, or simply social maladjustment. But a more careful analysis reveals that this withdrawal is often a necessary defensive response. Minds that have been expanded by trauma develop an increased sensitivity to dissonances and falsehoods that can make conventional social environments genuinely painful to inhabit. Consider the experience of trying to explain complex perceptions about human nature to someone who has never seriously questioned their basic assumptions about how the world works. It is like trying to describe colors to someone born blind or explain music to someone completely deaf. Common language simply lacks adequate vocabulary to transmit insights that emerge from consciousness states transformed by trauma and deep reflection. For millennia, different cultures developed specialized institutions to shelter and nurture these individuals with expanded perception. Monasteries, philosophical academies, esoteric circles, spiritual retreats, and artistic communities served as sanctuaries where those who saw beyond normal conventions could find companionship and purpose. These institutions implicitly recognized that profound wisdom requires specialized protection and cultivation, and that not everyone is equipped or destined to develop these capacities. The modern era, with its emphasis on democratization and egalitarianism, often fails to recognize the need for these specialized support structures. Our contemporary culture tends to pathologize both trauma and unconventional responses to it, preferring medication and normalized therapy to genuine processes of transformation and growth. While these resources have value and can alleviate unnecessary suffering, they can also inadvertently suppress the natural processes through which trauma transforms into wisdom. The result is a society that produces increasingly more individuals with expanded perception capacities, but offers fewer and fewer resources to help them integrate these capacities constructively. Many end up navigating complex psychological territories alone without adequate cultural maps or support communities. Some find refuge in online subcultures, others retreat to lives of solitary contemplation, and still others channel their perceptions into art, writing, or academic work that often remains misunderstood by the broader audience. This dynamic creates a central paradox in our modern societies. On one hand, our era of global complexity and accelerated change generates an urgent need for profound wisdom and systemic perception. On the other hand, the same processes that produce this wisdom also tend to isolate those who possess it from positions of influence and decision-making where it would be most needed. The wise retreat to the margins, while important decisions are made by those who maintain more conventional and limited perspectives. It is important to note that not all trauma produces wisdom, nor does all wisdom emerge from trauma. There are many individuals who have experienced significant suffering and become more bitter, closed, or destroyed by their experiences. Similarly, there are people who have developed profound insights through contemplation, study, or positive experiences of consciousness expansion. What distinguishes transformative trauma from destructive trauma seems related to a combination of factors: social support during the integration process, psychological and spiritual resources to process the experience, a conceptual framework to understand what is happening, and often a sense of purpose or meaning that emerges from suffering. The question we must confront as a society is whether we can develop more intelligent ways to cultivate wisdom without requiring the full price of devastating trauma, and whether we can create social structures that honor and integrate the wisdom of those transformed by suffering instead of marginalizing them. This is not simply a matter of individual compassion. It is a pragmatic necessity for the survival of civilizations facing challenges of unprecedented complexity. Our historical tendency has been to treat wisdom as a cultural luxury, something nice to have but not essential for basic social functioning. However, the challenges we face in the 21st century, from climate change to artificial intelligence, from global inequality to existential threats, require exactly the kind of systemic perception and deep understanding of human nature that emerges from transformative experiences of trauma and contemplation. Perhaps it is time to recognize that those who carry wisdom born from suffering are not social aberrations to be corrected or cured, but precious resources to be protected and consulted. Their uncomfortable perceptions about the limitations of our current systems, their sharpened sensitivities to the contradictions and falsehoods that permeate our culture, and their ability to see beyond conventional narratives may be exactly what we need to navigate an increasingly complex and uncertain future. This does not mean romanticizing trauma or suggesting we should seek suffering as a path to wisdom. Instead, it means recognizing that when trauma occurs, as it inevitably does in human experience, we can create conditions that facilitate its transformation into wisdom, rather than allowing it to calcify into bitterness or dissolve into pathology. This requires a fundamental shift in how we think about mental health, personal development, and the role of wisdom in society. A more mature approach to cultivating collective wisdom would recognize that different individuals have different capacities and inclinations for deep perception. Instead of applying a single model of psychological normalcy to everyone, we could develop multiple development paths that honor different types of intelligence and sensitivity. Some individuals are naturally suited for lives of contemplation and insight, others for action and implementation, still others for mediation between these different modes of being. Technology, which has often been a catalyst for alienation among the wise, also offers unprecedented possibilities for connection and collaboration between kindred minds scattered around the world. Digital platforms can enable the formation of virtual communities of practice, where individuals with expanded perceptions can share insights, offer mutual support, and collaborate on projects that require collective wisdom. These communities can serve as modern versions of ancient monasteries and academies, offering intellectual and spiritual refuge for those who see beyond conventions. At the same time, we need to develop new languages and conceptual frameworks that allow more effective communication between different levels of perception and understanding. Much of the alienation experienced by the wise arises from the absence of shared vocabulary to discuss insights that emerge from consciousness states transformed by trauma. If we can create linguistic and conceptual bridges between different modes of understanding, perhaps we can reduce the isolation of the wise without diluting their unique perceptions. Formal education also needs to evolve to recognize and cultivate different types of wisdom. Our current educational systems are optimized to produce individuals who can function effectively within existing social and economic structures, but offer little space for those whose perceptions transcend or question these structures. We need educational modalities that honor both the social need for technical competence and the deeper human need for meaning, purpose, and understanding of our existential condition. Fundamentally, what is at stake is our capacity as a species to integrate genuine wisdom into our collective decision-making structures. History is replete with examples of civilizations that collapsed because they failed to listen to the warning voices of those who saw beyond the comfortable narratives of the moment. Our era of global connectivity and technological power amplifies both the opportunities and risks of this ancient dynamic. If these reflections have touched on something you have been feeling, but perhaps have not found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to this channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us on this continuous journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. The pattern we observe, where wisdom and trauma walk hand in hand, creating wise exiles from their own societies, is not an immutable law of human nature. It is a particular configuration of our social and cultural organization that can be transformed through collective understanding and intention. The first step is recognizing that this pattern exists and understanding its implications. The second is deciding whether we want to continue wasting the wisdom of those who have been forged by the fire of transformative experience, or whether we want to create more intelligent ways of honoring and integrating their unique perceptions. Our choice will determine not only the individual fate of those who carry wisdom born from suffering, but also our collective capacity to navigate the monumental challenges that define our era. In a world of growing complexity, we simply cannot afford to marginalize those whose perception has been expanded by the deepest experiences that human life offers. The wisdom of exiles may be exactly the map we need to find our way through the unexplored territory of the future. Humans are the most intelligent animals on the planet. They are also the most delusional entities on the planet. A super intelligence is likely to be super delusional as well. Nothing in human history indicates that intelligence is a good antidote to delusion or necessarily puts you on a path towards the truth. I think that the impulse towards truth comes really from consciousness. And since there is no evidence that AI has consciousness, and maybe it will develop, maybe as we speak, the first conscious AI is being kind of born somewhere. But so far we have no convincing evidence that it is conscious, that it's capable of suffering. One of, I think, the big delusions of places like Silicon Valley is this overemphasis on intelligence, which is partly because there are extremely intelligent people there, who their life is built on intelligence, and they tend to overvalue intelligence. And this is a very dangerous thing. My kind of historical instinct is that a super intelligent AI, if it lacks consciousness, it will not pursue the truth. It will very quickly start to pursue other things, which will be shaped by delusions of various types.
How do you think AI will change storytelling from what it used to be?
Stories are some of the most powerful technologies in history. Whether it's the story of Jesus or whether it's the story of money, this is really the foundation of human civilization, is stories. Everything else is built on top of it. And for tens of thousands of years, the only entities on this planet that could create stories, either create new stories or elaborate and interpret old stories, were human beings. Only the human mind was capable of doing it. And now we have on this planet another entity which is capable of spreading and interpreting and ultimately creating stories. And it's only the beginning, it's nothing, it's just 10 years since the AI revolution began. We haven't seen anything yet. A lot of time when you ask artists or creators, what is the result? What are we trying to achieve? One very common answer is that they are trying to create a certain state of mind in somebody else, to bring up a certain emotion, joy or sadness or whatever. And this is the kind of thing that potentially AI would be very good at. Even if it has no emotions of its own, it will be able to recognize the emotion of other people and then find by trial and error how, if you imagine, like if you compare a human being, like our emotional system is basically like a piano, that the AI will learn how to produce sadness, how to produce joy, how to produce fear or awe better than a human artist, simply through the sheer volume of information it can process.